When you have algebra, there's two things. There's calculating and rearranging. So right now we're only looking at calculating, and whenever you're calculating, a very good place to start is BEDMAS, which obviously stands for brackets, exponents, division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction. Where it doesn't really matter if you're doing division or multiplication first, and it doesn't really matter if you're doing addition or subtraction. But you always have to do brackets first, you always have to do exponents second, then D or M third, A or S. When it comes to the calculating, we're going to be not only looking at BEDMAS, we're also going to be looking at distributive properties. We're also going to be looking at factoring, and we're going to be looking at FOIL. FOIL stands for first, outside, inside, last. So first would be 6x and 2x, which gives you 12x squared. Outside would be 6x and 1, which would give you 6x. Inside would be negative 6 and 2x, which give you negative 12x. And last would be negative 6 and positive 1, which gives you negative 6. Then you have to combine like terms. Only the x's are like terms. The x squared is by itself, and the 6 is by itself. So you're going to end up with 12x squared minus 6x minus 6. So what's important for you to understand is that this is a full cycle. If we want to go from here to there, that is when you do FOIL. And if you have this and you want to go back to this look, that is when you do factoring. So there are two shoes that belong together, like forward and reverse. So for your factoring, GCF stands for greatest common factor. That is trying to figure out whether the terms that you're looking at have something in common. So this is what we're going to do first. Type 1 factoring is when you have three terms like this, and the x squared is by itself. Type 2 is when you have three terms, but you have a number in front of the x squared, like this 2 here. And difference of squares was when you have two terms, something like x squared minus 25. Both terms are square pieces. X squared is the square root of x, and 25 is the square root of 5. And they have to be connected with a negative. So here you're simply looking if 10x squared and 25x have something in common. So we can look at the numbers first. Both 10 and 25 have a 5 in common, and so we can take 5 out. And both 10x squared and 25x have 1x in common, and so we can take an x out. Taking something out means dividing. 10 divided by 5 is 2. X squared, and you take 1x out, leaves you with 1x. 25, and we took a 5 out, leaves us with 5, and we took the x out, so there's no x left. So whenever you have type 1, you're dealing with three terms, and there's no number here in front of the x squared, and so this is a simple product sum. So you're looking for a product of 6 and a sum of negative 7. Two numbers that multiply to give you 6 and add to give you negative 7 would be negative 1 and negative 6. And in type 1 factoring, you can then simply split it up into those two brackets, x minus 1, so the minus 1 went in here, and x minus 6, and the minus 6 went in there. Type 2 was when you had a number in front of the x squared. And the product is these two multiplied with each other. So your product becomes -6, because 2 times -3 is -6. The sum is still the middle number here, which in this case would be -1. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give you -6 and add to give you -1, and those two numbers would be -3 and 2. Then we split this up. The negative x in the middle gets replaced by -3x plus 2x. So -3x plus 2x is the same as -x minus 3. Then we're grouping, so we simply put brackets around the first two terms, and we put brackets around the last two terms. There's always a plus in the middle. If you have a negative, then it would be plus bracket, and the negative would be with a 2x. Then we're factoring a greatest common factor out of each bracket. So the first bracket here, 2x squared and minus 3x, the numbers don't have a common factor, but you can take an x out. So we're factoring an x out and are being left with 2x minus 3. And in the second bracket, the numbers don't have anything in common. They also don't have an x in common, so we can simply write 1. That makes it easier for us to visualize afterwards. So you remember that if these two brackets are not the same, then you've done something wrong. So now we can factor this bracket of 2x minus 3 out, which means that if we're factoring 2x minus 3 out of this first piece, we are only left with x, and if we're taking 2x minus 3 out of this piece, we're left with plus 1. So a difference of squares always has two terms. In this case we have 16x squared and 9. And a difference of squares, it is called a difference. So there's always a negative in the middle. Sometimes they try to trick you by putting a positive in the middle. If that is the case, then there's nothing you can do. It cannot be factored. So in order to break this up, we are creating two brackets. One bracket will have a plus in the middle, and the other bracket will have a minus in the middle. And we're taking the square root of 16, which is 4, and the square root of x squared, which is x. So that is going to be your first number. And we're taking the square root of 9, which is 3, which is going to be your second number.